I'm just going to say a couple of words about our office. It's called Euroi. It's quite a young office. Both of us, me and my partner, had the previous experience with bigger office, but we decided to concentrate mainly on a creative project, and this is for us a very interesting example of the things we are fascinated with. This is the Salvador Dali surrealistic pavilion for the New York Fair in 1939. That was built and in the end banned, so never really shown. And for us that was a great moment where architecture meets the surrealism. And then there's another topic that we're really interested in our office, and it's the craziness of architecture. And this is an example of the Spanish development that happened in the last decade, and that completely crashed after the crisis. Maybe I should just say my partner is Spanish, so this is where it comes from. And for us, having a position on that type of subject is very important as a young practice. So I will start with a very small workshop that we organize in Recife. For those of you who don't know, Recife is a city in Brazil. It's one of the biggest cities, I think the fourth. It's in the Nordeste, in Pernambuco. It's a very poor area. It's also a very big city with a beautiful river. Well, beautiful maybe is not the word. It's an extremely polluted water, and it made Recife quite famous for two reasons. The first one is they had the slaughterhouse along the river, so they were throwing all the rest of the cows in the river, which made Recife a really dangerous shark beach, so no one can swim anymore, really. And the second one is, of course, the pollution of the favela, throwing all the waste directly in the river, which make the river completely segregated from the city. And this is an example. So you have this beautiful mangrove growing, and these huge favelas of people directly living from the waste of the river. And this is the perfect example you would have. Recife is also the city where Josué Castro was born. It's quite a famous theoretician, mainly on well, capitalism and lack of food issue, I would say. And he wrote this very famous essay, which was called Crabs and Men, I guess, the translation, which was about this specific favela of Recife, where the people throw the waste in the river, and this waste is eaten by the crab, and the people of the favela mainly eat these crabs. So these crabs are grown from the waste of the favela, eaten by the people, and their waste go back in the river. So he called it the circle of the crab, and it became kind of a reference. So we were asked to basically think about this river and a way to change it in a short workshop. So it was a participative workshop where everyone started screwing and welding and imagining structure, and the idea was simply to bring people to the river, to make them realize the importance of this river for the city. Well, this is the TV coming, and one of the first decisions taken by the participant was to create a big swimming pool made out of waste that they could find. The idea was to be able to swim, because the river is so polluted, no one can swim in it, obviously. So people could swim in this river. So this is what was built during the workshop. I'm not going to go into detail, but basically they call it the playa. So the idea was to build a beach on this really, really polluted river. And this is one of the events that were thrown in the workshops, a very popular event. And here you can see the swimming pool. So finally people could have the impression to swim in this river. I'm going quickly through the images. So this is again one of the big parties with bands, and everyone coming in for the first time, for most of these people from Recife, enjoying this river that they never do. And in the back you can see one of the other projects of the workshop, which was a small floating swimming pool. And you see it here, so it was built again with recycled material, and it went through the favelas, and all the kids could go and finally again swim in this river, or at least swim in a clean little swimming pool in the river. Again, built with waste material, and here you see the kids in the favela, they're actually going hunting for the crabs and swimming in the river. Okay, next project is in Hanoi. Again, we were invited in Hanoi for a workshop. And actually, it was kind of an interesting initiative where several offices went there just to work with no specific target. So Hanoi, for those of you who don't know, was of course a communist city with very interesting big public spaces, but also beautiful lakes, again, and a very big tradition of gardening. So it's a very dense city, but you have an extremely beautiful garden. And when we were asked to intervene in a space very similar to this one, this is why we wrote this project here, we were asked to organize a lecture, exactly what we do here. But the nature is so important in the heart of the city that we decided to build a garden and not really a lecture hall. So we made the plans for this garden, we selected the plants, and this is the result. So it's a big penicillin factory that was deserted, and we built this garden. What you can see, the black bricks are coal bricks that they use to heat. So they're everywhere in the city and they use them to cook. So we use them as the floor, and then with bamboo we created in the garden a lecture hall. So here you cannot really see it, you only see the garden, but if you enter you have this platform where the public could sit, and this is at night when the lecture were prepared. First the workers were enjoying the platforms, and then this is one of the events, so it's very similar to what happened tonight. So people were sitting inside this garden in the factory. And actually about 150 people could sit on this bamboo platform. So again, there we try to use the local materials and respond to a very specific situation in Hanoi. But being there, we decided to do another, again, I'm only presenting very small projects, so I hope you're not too disappointed. We decided to work on the theme of the food, and mainly the street food, which is extremely interesting in Hanoi. The street food is circulating extremely well. Everything is fresh. Every morning you have small bikes coming from all around the city, from the countryside, bringing the food at 4 in the morning, entering the city, and the food is directly cooked everywhere. Extremely good and extremely fresh. So we were very interested in that, in this extremely dense area. So we started looking at public spaces, and then I'm just showing you a couple of interesting public spaces where we were hanging out. This one is on the train track, so it's when the train are not passing, people just sit on the train track and eat, so it's a little restaurant. And every time you hear the train, everyone moves. And here on this picture you can see the train passing a couple millimeters from the people eating. This is another type of public spaces where a little restaurant, it's actually home food, open, and people just sit on the sidewalk and enjoy the dinner. So very, very beautiful spaces, very interesting spaces in an extremely dense city. So we decided to work on that and react to this beautiful settings by creating a little bike, bringing activities to the area. It was actually built for this workshop. So this is the metal worker building this bike. It's based on the traditional house, which are very vertical houses with the functions stacked on top of each other. So we built this in the countryside, and then we brought it to the city and tried to see what kind of activities would happen in this little bike tower. So here you see the bike coming from the countryside to the city. Very strange creature. And then a couple pictures of the events. This is Bo. This is actually street food, so during the day people use it to cook food. They use it to nap. And then in the evening, you don't really see here, but they have this little red stool that they have everywhere. And they brew their own beer in Hanoi, very good beer. So it became what they call a Miaoi, which is the beer of the day, where people could come and drink beer. And this is the end of the party. You can see a bit of the crates left. And then the last picture of a couple lovers enjoying the bike for another reason. Okay, I'm jumping from continent to continent, but again, it's trying to explain a bit how we can react with architecture to a specific situation. So this is New York. This is a project that is a couple years old now. And when we were in New York, we decided to work on Rikers Island. So this is an own commission that we gave to ourselves. We decided to understand what is Rikers Island. For those of you who don't know, a couple numbers, so it's quite a small island, it's about 1 million square meters. There's about 300 buildings and about 20,000 people live on it. So you have basically all the facilities you need. But this city, this island, so Rikers Island, is quite hidden in the city, and most of the people in New York don't know about its existence, which actually have never seen it. So we started looking for it on maps. And if you look basically at the top right of the picture, you can see above the Queens a little sign written Rikers Island, just above LaGuardia Airport. But there's no island drawn on this map. So the mystery was very intriguing to us. So we started looking at many maps. Here above LaGuardia Airport you can see an island, but it's called Ward's Island, which is the name of another island. Again, we googled for more maps. Here it was not there. You only could see the LaGuardia Airport. This is the bus map, subway and bus map. On this one, the island had disappeared again. This is again the subway map, no trace of the island about LaGuardia. This is, then we look at park, so this is the New York City Park Department map. And here you can see above LaGuardia Airport, Rikers Island, which is drawn as a park. So apparently it was owned by the park department, or at least it was a park. And then again, this is another map that we look at the park and recreation of the city. And on this one you see there's an island, but it's empty. And then another map, this is Google Map. So you actually find it on Google Map, but there's nothing on there. So we finally find a real picture of this island, and what you can see here, it's one of the biggest prisons you can find in a city. It's really in the center of New York City, but it's completely cut from the rest of the city. And as you can see, it's extremely dense. There's, as I said, 20,000 inmates on it in a lot of different type of facilities. So we decided to look at the history of this island. Again, that's, as architects, that's the type of thing that we can do. So we started researching. The first picture we find was from 1800, sorry. And it was a small island, a lot smaller than now, and it was a farm owned by a Dutch farmer. A couple years later, I'm skipping some of the evolution, but you can see a big island. Actually, what happened is the waste of mainly of the subway was all thrown there. Again, this is a long story, but Bahrain has a divided population between Muslim Shia and Sunni. Actually, they've never been fighting, but the government, or the king, has always been on the Sunni side and is ruling. So mostly in these Shia villages, people feeling the Arab Spring coming in the surrounding country, try to overrule the king and install democracy, which of course was very interesting and sadly didn't work. But again, being there and working there as architects, we thought we had to find a way to document what was happening, and also to try to understanding in terms of spaces. So I think I'm going to cut the movie, it's quite short anyway. But what we did is documentation of the repartition of space and the control of space of all these villages. And you will see later, but I'm talking about that because I think in Ukraine this is something that we've seen very recently. And again here in all these villages, every night the young people try to block the street. Usually, of course, it doesn't work. It's very symbolic, because if the police wanted to come, they could destroy, and they usually, in the end, do it. But basically, with architectural elements, with roadblocks, they try to regain the power over their own villages. So we went through a survey of all these types of roadblocks. I'm passing quickly, so you can see what people have built. This is usually the next day that we took the pictures, so they've been removed or replaced. You only see a couple of things left. Usually they're done with anything that is left there. And again, this is a project that we believe is architecture. And even if it's only for the moment documentation, it has been turned into a project that I'm not going to show today. But again, we believe that this documentation, this understanding of the fight over space, over public space, is one of the duty of the architects. And I'm just continuing with this documentation. We also documented all the sign. This is the main protest on the Pearl roundabout before it was attacked. And then people started making all this graffiti related to this space, this Pearl roundabout, and this architectural figure in the center, which was this quite ugly pearl, concrete big pearl, became a very important symbol for the revolution. And you can see here in all the graffiti. And I'm following on Maidan. When the events started to happen, the political events in Kiev a few months ago, we were asked to participate to a normal architectural exhibition in Basel, the Swiss Architecture Museum. And again, we thought that as architects we had to find a more interesting position than showing our own projects in Basel and discuss about the housing we're building and the detailing. And at this moment we had seen all this crazy picture of Maidan, and people had started camping on it, and there was this incredible ingenuity and intelligence of new buildings and of barricades that was built there. So we contacted our friends from Bureau, mainly Sergei Ferle, who's somewhere here, I don't know where. And we asked him if he wanted to collaborate on a project for the Swiss Architecture Museum. And our idea, again, was mainly to document what was happening in terms of architecture. So Sergei, seems like the film is not working, so I'll jump that. But the Bureau here started documenting and interviewing people, not on the political side of the events, but really on what they were building. And this is one of the videos we presented in the end. And it's only a long discussion. I'm not going to show the whole movie, it's actually very long. But it's this discussion going on of these people deciding to build their own architecture there. Maybe we can go back to the slides. So for us, the fact that people were starting building their own housing, because people were living there obviously, but also all sorts of objects was for us fascinating. And it was a way for us to understand the situation as well, because of course in Switzerland, living there and having very little knowledge about the situation, we couldn't understand most of what was happening. So it's a way for us to understand. So we conducted this survey with the help of the Bureau here. So they sent us a lot of pictures, and we started making a survey of all the elements, as many elements as we could of these different buildings. So you can see some of the camps, I'm passing quickly, some of the barricades, and some of the crazy objects and catapults, etc. that were imagined by the protesters. Of course the shields, which became very important symbols. And now I'm showing you quickly, but this was quite an extensive survey, and the idea was to do a little publication so these things could be remembered. And this is the final result, so it's a small booklet, very cheap, that we printed, and that condensed all these drawings and a couple theoretical texts on the subject. And then, because we had to occupy this space and show this video, we decided to create an installation with a Bureau here in Kiev. And we started discussing with them, and I think what impressed us a lot at the time was the shields, the police shields, and the way they were stolen, and they became almost part of the architecture. So, again, we used these shields and created a little hut, which was for us, in the end it was kind of a little installation, but it was reflecting and hopefully helping people to open their mind and try thinking about what was happening in Kiev, in Switzerland. Of from Switzerland. So again, this isn't really an installation made for a museum in Switzerland. So here you see this tent, and people would just come inside and look at these videos. Most of the videos were interviews, where people from Kiev were again explaining what they were building and what was their reason behind the protests. And now, just to conclude this talk, I'll go back to Switzerland for a couple minutes. As you know, well, Switzerland has a quite high architectural standard. There's also quite a lot of money. The crisis in Europe hasn't touched too much Switzerland, and the architects don't need to think too much, and they can build quite a lot. But for us, again, this is why I call it position. We had to position ourselves in front of the crisis and what was happening in the surrounding country, and we decided to conduct and build a few very, very cheap projects. And this is one of the projects we did. It's actually for people we know, friends, and they had a big house, a lot of people lived there, and they had to extend the house to build some kind of a greenhouse, but mainly a place where they could have dinner when too many people were in the house, and they had no money. So we recycled all windows, actually from other projects where houses were demolished. And we built this very simple frame, and then we built this pavilion. And for some unknown reason, it was actually published. And I think in Switzerland, it became almost of a discussion to understand why such a pavilion made with so little money and with no craftsman became an architectural object who could actually be published. And here you can see a couple pictures of the inside. So again, almost only recycled material. And then I'm just showing one last project. Also because it made me think of this place here. This beautiful area, this beautiful fabric factory. And this was a temporary project, again with no means, so very far from the concrete buildings we usually build in Switzerland. And the idea was to create a temporary event, again very similar to here, for a couple of days. And this area was used as a bus depot. So we decided to organize a very big maze out of the buses. So people could get lost in the maze, and then a lot of cultural activity would happen in it. So people would enter on one side, and then they had to find their way out. And basically, the whole thing was done with existing material we could find on the site. This is some of the stages for musicians done with the recycled material. One of the bus was scrolling. Here you can see a piano in it, so there was a concert in one of the buses. There was also a big dance stage. Again, there was very little money, so it was only lit by the buses, the lights of the buses. This was a very small concert hall in one of the buses again. Here you can see just some area in the maze where people would get lost. One of the concerts. Again, it's a dance performance, very similar to what we have here, only pallets and what we could find on the area. And then this is a very interesting area, which was the cleaning and oiling area, so we also organized a concert there. And finally, this was the tire changing area where the bar was, which became a very pleasant bar where a lot of people came for a couple of days. And then finally, this is the waste trucks. And again, with the back of the waste trucks, we organized another stage where we could have concerts. I have no idea what time is it and how long I'm supposed to talk. I think it's long enough. So thank you very much.